Good day, everyone. You want to turn off that microphone? And welcome. Okay, welcome to this webinar, an informational webinar on the call for expressions of interest to host regional and/or sub-regional technical and scientific cooperation support centres to facilitate the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. That's quite a long title for a webinar. Friends, as you all know, we were very successful in Montreal in December last year in adopting the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, a very ambitious framework to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity this decade. This is going to take enormous effort. It's going to need mobilization of financial resources, and it's also going to need capacity building, and it's going to need strong cooperation, including technical and scientific cooperation among parties. An important part of the package of decisions that came along with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework was the decision to strengthen technical and scientific cooperation, specifically to create this network of centres to support the implementation of the new framework. And I think this is perhaps one of the outcomes of Montreal that's perhaps less known than the others, but is it really important? We know that to carry out the measures necessary to implement the new framework, to achieve those goals and targets, is going to require a lot of technical expertise.
It seems that there's a big echo and they cannot hear very well.
Okay, I apologize. It seems that we have a little bit of a problem with the sound. Should I unmute it? That's how it was. Is the sound okay now? Apologies. I hope everyone can hear well. Is it okay now? Okay, good. So we have this ambitious framework. We need all the support we can to help parties implement it. We know right now, during these first 2 years, of course, countries are busy translating the global framework into national targets and identifying the measures needed to achieve those targets through the development of national biodiversity strategies and action plans. And of course, then those measures have to be implemented, and this through a whole of government, whole of society approach. So the decision to establish this technical and scientific cooperation mechanism is an important step that will support parties in this and then in the subsequent measures through the decade. The decision sets out a number of functions for the proposed support centres for the proposed network. And in a while, my colleague Eri Tamai will present some of these in detail. You'll also provide these in background information that's available on the website. There was also a number of criteria that will be used in the establishment in identifying the centres that will be part of the network. Before handing over to Eri, I just also want to mention that we, I think, are on a good start in getting support for the implementation of the framework. Just last week, we had the decision of the GEF Assembly to ratify the establishment of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, a dedicated fund also called for in the decisions of COP15. And we saw the first contributions to that fund. So we're looking forward to that getting underway and being able to support parties before COP16. I'll also just say that as we look at how this network of scientific cooperation support centres are developed, we should note really that we'll see a diversity of centres from developing countries, from developed countries, from international organisations. And we'll perhaps see also a diversity of centres in terms of their focus, focusing, yes, on many scientific and technical aspects, but also on policy aspects. Some more specific and detailed, others more general. And I hope as we move forward to develop this network, we'll be able to draw upon all of this expertise in a way that can support the large efforts that will be needed to implement the Kunming-Montreal framework. So thanks very much for your interest in this network. Thanks for joining this webinar. I'll now hand over to my colleagues.
Thank you very much, David. Can everybody hear me well? Okay, so I'm going to give you an introduction to the technical and scientific cooperation mechanism, and highlight the criteria that will be used to select entities to foster the support centers, and also give you an update of where we are at the moment in the process. So, and as part of housekeeping, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on our website so that you have an opportunity to review it later, and those that are unable to join today. And I'm Eri Tamale, I'm not Christina. I'm just using that terminal today to present this to you. As David has just said, we had a momentous event in last year when the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework was adopted. And this came with not just a global framework, but also with a package of decisions that are meant to support the implementation of the framework. And this framework is quite ambitious. You all know it's the vision is to be able to live in harmony with nature by the year 2050, and the mission is to take urgent action to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity and get back onto the right track towards achieving the mission. And the framework has 4 goals, as most of you are aware. And goal D is the one that focuses on the means of implementation. And this is where technical and scientific cooperation is one of the means of implementation. And the goal is to have adequate means of implementation, including the financial resources, the capacity building and development, the technical and scientific cooperation, and access to and transfer of technology to be able to fully implement the framework. And the framework also has target 20 that's calls for strengthening of capacity building and development, technology transfer, innovation, and as well as technical and scientific cooperation to support implementation. And so today we are going to be focusing on the technical and scientific cooperation aspects of the process, and the decision 15.8 that was adopted that adopted the technical and scientific cooperation mechanism, which will consist of a network of regional and sub-regional support centers, and these will be coordinated at the global level by a coordination entity, a global coordination entity. As some of you might have aware, the global coordination entity will be further, the modalities of operation of the global coordination entity will be further discussed at SPI 4. But right now we're in this process of having the regional and or sub-regional support centers established. So the objectives of the TSC mechanism, basically first to enhance the capacities in relation to science, technology, and innovation to support the implementation of the GBF and the convention and its protocols. And this will be done, of course, in many ways, including the development of human resources, but also strengthening institutional capacities. The second objective is to enable technology assessment and monitoring, and ensuring that appropriate technologies can be identified. And the third objective is to ensure that we are able to promote and facilitate the development, transfer, and use of appropriate technologies, including indigenous and traditional technologies. Fourth is to promote joint research and cooperation and collaboration in the use of new technological and scientific advancements. And the fourth is to scale up innovative solutions, and finally, to facilitate the access to and exchange of relevant technical and scientific data, information, and knowledge. So it's quite ambitious, but I think it's achievable, and we need to be ambitious as we work towards achieving the global biodiversity framework. Next. So the support centers are expected to undertake a number of functions. The decision outlined quite a handful of these functions, and first is these centers will act as the ones stop point where parties can access technical knowledge, tools, and expertise that can enable them to implement the GBF and the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plans, the NBSAPs. So the centers are supposed to provide that one-stop shop. Secondly, the centers are expected to facilitate research programs and development of technologies, and that would help the parties. The center is also expected to provide information on existing opportunities for accessing technical resources and innovations and technologies, but also opportunities for resources that are out there, both technical and financial resources. And thirdly, the centers are expected to mobilize resources to address the identified technical and scientific needs. And here by resources, we don't mean only financial resources, we mean also mobilizing technologies and innovations. Fifthly, the centers are expected to facilitate matchmaking between those entities that are organizations or governments that can provide technical assistance, and matching them with those that have expressed needs through a transparent process. And there are more functions. I don't think I'm going to go one by one. I think they were elaborated in the background document we shared with you. But one of the things I should highlight is the need to that these centers will also helping to strengthen institutional capabilities to facilitate TSC, and this is key. This is really key. The emphasis on making sure that we have institutions and not just individuals that are capable of advancing TSC work and technology transfer at the country level. Next slide. So in terms of how the centers are going to be operationalized, this is what we are grappling with right now. And of course, the first step is we are in the selection process. But once the selection is done, and I'll be talking about the selection process in a few minutes, So the centers, once they are selected, the decision of the COP envisaged that the centers will be expected to mobilize resources for technical and scientific cooperation support, as I've already alluded to. However, we as a secretariat, the COP requested us to also facilitate in the process of identifying potential donors and providers of assistance that can supplement or complement what is regional support centers will be able to mobilize. So we as a secretariat, together with our partners, will be working, making every effort to identify where potential support can come from to support your work, the work of those entities. COP15 also invited the Global Environment Facility to support activities of the centers that will be selected for the eligible activities. As you know, GF works within a particular framework and the eligible countries and eligible activities. So GF was invited, at least for those activities that are eligible, to be supported through the centers. And also governments and relevant organizations were also invited to provide financial and technical support. So in addition, the selected support centers are expected to be to engage and collaborate with a network of partners at the regional or sub-regional level. It's not expected that all this technical support will be provided by one entity. It's practically not possible. The expectation is that whichever center is selected will have the capability to mobilize a network of partners within a region or existing scientific centers within this region or sub-region to help in delivering this support required by the parties. And already there are a number of initiatives that are underway. For example, the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership, the Global Knowledge Support Service for Biodiversity, the High Ambition Coalition, the BioBridge Initiative, that are already working towards supporting parties. And these centers, once they are put in place, we expect that the centers will be working very closely with these different initiatives in order to deliver the support to the parties. So I think I'll leave it at that in terms of describing the mechanism and the regional centers and how they are going to work. And I'm going now to focus on taking you through the selection process that was elaborated in the decision 15.8. So first of all, the criteria for selection. It's expected that the centers that offering will have the ability to provide technical advice and support in planning and implementing country-led projects. So the entities should have that prior experience and demonstrated impact in terms of helping countries to plan and implement projects. Secondly, we expect that those centers would have the experience and expertise in areas of work of the convention and its protocols. So familiar with the different biodiversity areas and the targets or the GBF targets, at least have some experience and expertise on some of them, perhaps not all of them. As I said earlier, that they will need to work with other partners in the region. But at least they should have a core level of expertise within the organization. Then they should have the capability and capacity to mobilize resources. This is very important because they all those centers will take the biggest responsibility of mobilizing resources, while the secretariat and other partners will be looking at helping them. So the entities or the organizations are also expected to have in place mechanisms that that can enable them to manage multiple complex projects and programs. And also this links to having in place policies and procedures that allow them to disclose their financial information if required. And so the financial disclosure is very important for transparency purposes. They are also expected that these centers will have a network of collaborators, as I've already said several times, but are able capacity to put together those networks in place. And finally, these centers are expected to have experience in engaging and facilitating technical cooperation through various regional and sub-regional networks within the context of the biodiversity work. So those are the criteria that we will be using to screen and evaluate those that will have submitted expressions of interest. And so in terms of the process already started, and the notification was sent out in July, and we expect that this will be that those are interested in offering themselves to host these centers, support centers, will submit by the deadline of 30th of September. And this would, the offers should be accompanied by a support letter from the head of the institution that is offering to support to host this center. Secondly, we, in the course of October, will be screening the applications. The Secretariat will do the first screening using a matrix, assessment matrix that has been developed with the support of the informal advisory group on technical and scientific cooperation. And after that screening, the long list of organizations will be made available to the informal advisory group for their advice. The informal advisory group advises the executive secretary. So they will look through the long list and again, using the looking at the metrics that we have, identify those that have a strong score highly, and these will now move to the next stage, where we'll request for additional information and including information related to the current portfolios of the organization, and the level of staffing they have, the types of networks they have, and more detailed information that can give us an idea of who is best suited to host the regional sub-regional support centers. And the decision requested that the Secretariat, after all this advice from the IAD, will prepare a short list of up to 3 organizations. And after the report of the IAD, this will be submitted to the parties through a notification for feedback about these entities. So there's a transparent process, and those entities that have made it to the final shortlist will get feedback from the parties and other players on their suitability. And all these now, this report, after looking at the feedback received from parties, will be submitted to the COP Bureau, and it's the COP Bureau that will make the final selection of the entities to host these centers. So that's it. That is the process. We hope that this will be done completed before COP, the next COP, COP 16, and that by COP 16, at least the first set of regional and sub-regional centers will have become operational, or at least embarked on the process of delivering services to the parties. So I think I will leave it at that, and we'll be sharing more information and documents that can help you to get more insights about the TSC mechanism, including some of the documents that were prepared towards as we prepared for the COP, which are very useful, provide very useful information, including the independent review of the TSC mechanisms and programs, which was submitted to COP15. It's a very important document that I think you need to review. And for SBI3, the Secretary also prepared a document on the estimated costs for the different options at that time that were being considered, which among them includes the regional and sub-regional centers. So that might be also a document that might be of interest to you to review and look at the costs that were estimated at that time. Thank you very much. I think now we'll open the floor for questions and then the clarifications that you need. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. I'm actually I would like to thank all the registrants and participants for sending us all these great questions that came in. We received almost 100 questions, and we tried to group them into the different topics or issues that people wanted to know more about. There were a lot of questions regarding the criteria, and we hope that that's been answered through the presentation that Ari just made. And there were some questions about funding, and then there were some questions regarding the types of organizations that are eligible to apply. So we will take some of the questions. Please use the chat to add your questions. We will take some of the questions from here. I will pass them to Eddie and our other people in the room to try and answer them. And we will also be trying to answer some of the questions with you through the Q&A. So I'm just going to actually ask Eddie to answer a couple of the questions that may have not been covered in the presentation. There was a question on about some other of the initiatives, Eddie, that are happening. There's a questions regarding what will the relationship to the Global Biodiversity Knowledge Servers and Associated Process Initiative be? And there was a question regarding whether this technical and scientific cooperation mechanism will also, what its relationship with other mechanisms, for example, the NBSAP Accelerator and other initiatives that are currently underway or being developed.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. I think as I mentioned in my presentation, the support centers, once they established, we expect that they will work very closely with the various initiatives underway. And some of these initiatives are already aware that these centers will be coming on board. And of course, it's a chicken and egg situation. Before you know which are the actual entities that will be selected, the other partner initiatives also just waiting. But they are very willing. We've been talking to some of them, and they are very willing to work very closely with the support centers as one of the possible modes of delivery of their programs. And being entities within a region or sub-region and closer to the parties on a regular basis, these centers, support centers, I think will be very useful also in helping with ensuring that there's close collaboration and coordination among the different support initiatives, and maximizing the synergies and the impact, collective impact that these initiatives will have. So the centers will be expected to collaborate very closely with these initiatives initiatives. And as soon as the centers are selected, we'll have to organize the meetings with the different initiatives out there. We've already mentioned some of them, the NB-SAP Accelerator Partnership, the Global Knowledge Support Service for Biodiversity, the High Level Ambition Coalition. They are all waiting and ready to work with the centers once they are established.
Thank you, Eddie. I'm going to now also looking in the chat, and there's lots of questions pouring in, and there are many questions around the type of organization. Would, for example, consortia, are they eligible to apply? NGOs, are they eligible to apply? Intergovernmental organizations, are they eligible to apply? So I'm wondering if you can speak to that, the type of organizations. And also there's one question regarding if it's a global organization but has regional nodes, would that be eligible to apply? Can you speak to that?
Thank you. Yeah, the decision was open to entities and organizations. Networks, they will be eligible if they have a central hub, they have a coordinating entity. Because networks are loose. If they have a coordinating entity, it's that entity that will apply and be considered to be one of the centers. But as I said earlier, it's very important that whichever center is selected or organization hosting a center is selected, even if it doesn't have a network now, it should work towards establishing a network of different partners that can support in the delivery of all the functions that I outlined earlier. So, so if you already have a consortia of organization, of course, it's kind of like you are a step ahead. So the entity that already has that consortia of network of entities, that will be a strong point to be considered in your application. So definitely they are welcome to offer themselves to host these centers. I hope I've answered that part of the question. And what was the other question? Sorry.
No, that was a question about
the consortium. So yeah, if entities are in the form of a consortium already, in the form of a network already, and they have a central coordinating hub, is that central, the organization or the entity that is coordinating the consortium and the network is the one that will apply. It will not be the network per se, it's the hub that will submit the application and to be considered along with all the other entities and organizations.
Thank you, Mary. There are some other questions, and perhaps wasn't that clear from the presentation, but Eddie, can you please speak a little bit regarding potential sources of funding, or what is foreseen for these centers to be, how are they, some detail on how these centers are foreseen to be funded?
Thank you. I think I've alluded to this already in my presentation. Right now, we don't have a concrete source that will say this is where the money is going to come from. The COP didn't establish a clear arrangement on how the funding is going to be done. We were asked to identify the options and the possibilities, and we, as a secretariat, we are working on that as the process for selection of these centers is underway, and perhaps by in the coming month, maybe around COP, SBI 4 and going to COP 16. At that point, we'll have come up with some guidance on how the resources will be mobilized, and this will be considered by SBI and further by COP, and give a direction on how this will be done. But however, I have to emphasize that as entities are offering themselves, one of the criterion is that you should have the capacity to mobilize funding from existing funding sources, from donor agencies, from foundations, and there is a lot of goodwill to support implementation of the global biodiversity framework and the national biodiversity strategies and action plans. So I'm sure there will be entities that are willing to provide funding, as long as we have a sound institutional arrangement at the regional level that is set up to especially through these centers. So I'm quite hopeful that donors will come along to support these centers, but we need to have really good and strong centers that have a track record of delivery.
Thank you, Ari. We've been trying to also respond to the questions in the chat. There was one question from Eva. Institutions will only have a month to apply, which is a very short. If we take into account the work the facility has to do to seriously commit to carry out this role. Could you speak to that a little bit in the phased approach?
Yes. So, well, we are caught between trying to make sure everybody is given ample time, but also the pressure to be able to move fast and take early action to deliver. And so we gave a window of two months. The notification has been up for quite some time, and the entities have another 1 month to put together their packages and submit their expressions of interest. And there's a long selection process that we have to go through. So I think you bear with us that I think with all the time we gave was reasonable. But if it becomes an issue for many organizations, then of course we may consider. But we really need to be able to move and keep the pace for all the other processes that are underway, including SBI and going to COP. So we hope you can bear with us and use the time remaining, and especially after this information session, to submit your expressions of interest. And but also, as I said, it's a two-stage phase. This is a two-phase process. Those that will be additional information will be requested at the second stage. So if at least in the first phase you can be able to complete the expression of interest form and provide as much information as possible, at least to get a sense of the capacity of your institutions, then additional, more detailed information can be provided at the second stage.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. We have a question. CBD also refers to biodiversity in agriculture. Will NGOs which are committed to the conservation of agrobiodiversity also be considered?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as if you have read the Global Biodiversity Framework, it's not actually it covers all these areas that have relation to biodiversity. Agrobiodiversity is a key component. I think we have like 3 targets actually that talk to agricultural biodiversity. So yeah, these institutions will also be eligible. And of course, if they offer themselves, then if their focus is on more on agricultural biodiversity, they will need to work with the partner organizations within a region or sub-region to be able to cover for the other targets on protected areas, ecosystem restoration, and the rest. So I need to kind of emphasize it more that we don't expect that one entity that is going to offer to host these centers will have all the expertise in-house to deliver. So they will be expected to mobilize other partners.
Thank you, Eddie. There's a question here. There is a very high degree of capacity difference, especially at institutional level between regions. Do you have strategies in place in case you do not get strong proposals from some regions?
Yes, we are fully aware of this situation that different regions and sub-regions at different levels, and this will be taken into account. And as if you look at the decision, actually, for example, there was a real request to take into consideration, for example, the situations of the small island developing states, which might not have such many strong institutions. So all these factors will be taken into account. We need to make sure that the parties are able to access the support that they need through entities that are able to provide this support. So those considerations definitely will be taken into account. And also I should emphasize that I think there are entities that perhaps are operating at different scales, and but in terms of a proven track record of delivery on the ground, they might not work in 100 countries, 20, 30 countries, but they work in 5 countries, but their work, there's a track record that within those 5 countries, they have delivered, and everybody knows. So again, we'll take those into account. Their portfolio might not be high. They might not be managing a portfolio of $100 million, but they are managing 10 million or 5 million, but they are doing a good job. Again, those will not be excluded. It's really about being able to deliver to the parties at different scales.
Thank you. I see a lot of the questions still coming in regarding, the number of centers and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if you could answer this one. It says, is there a possibility of having multiple centers per region / sub-region? Example, on thematic areas, like 4 thematic areas. So can you answer that?
The Informal Advisory Group was asked to look into this and provide advice to the Executive Secretary and eventually to the COP. Of course, this would need a situation analysis in every region. Some sub-regions are big, some regions are big. Say Asia Pacific is so big. Having one center that would support that entire region, of course, will not be practical. So there will be the IAG will look at the different factors and also look at the kind of expressions of interest received, and then make a determination on, at least in the pilot phase, how many centers could be recommended for establishment. So we'll come to this in the coming month, and the IAG will advise us on how many centers can be established initially. In terms of whether we will go into establishing thematic centers, I think this is unlikely, at least in the initial phase, because we want centers to be able to provide support across board and as many focal areas as thematic areas as possible. But in the long run, perhaps the need for having those thematic centers, support centers might become necessary, but at least in the initial phase, now we are looking at centers that will be able to provide support on multiple thematic areas. My colleague Neil is going to add to that.
Yes, thanks very much. Is there a... Yeah, thanks very much, Eri. Just to add to that, I mean, clearly, given the scope of the Global Biodiversity Framework, it's unlikely that any one center would have absolutely all the expertise. But I think one important aspect of the work will be the ability of an institution selected to serve as the host of such a network, such a center, would be the ability to network and its relationship with other relevant institutions. in order to be able to bring in specific expertise. So I think that that's also important to bear in mind, that whereas one entity, possibly, the lead of a consortium, as some people have asked, would serve as the designated center or entity, but would be able to network with other specialist institutions within the sub-region or region. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Neil and Neri. I see there's quite a few questions still coming in regarding this idea of consortia of different universities and that are specialized, and how that could work. I don't know if there's any way that you potentially share with the participants this idea of, this one support center that has a network, to kind of understand what the idea. I don't think it's clear yet because people keep asking that question.
Yes, let me make another attempt. Yeah, as I said earlier, if there's a consortia of entities or scientific entities or that are offering support, of course, that they will have an added advantage, because as we have said several times, and what my colleague Neil has just said, we expect that whichever entity is selected will build a network of institutions and entities that can offer support on different thematic areas. So if already such a consortium is in place, that will be an added advantage. But we will need to have the secretariat of that consortium is the one that will offer itself as the entity to host the center, and that will be the legal personality that will be recognized, but with the understanding that it's representing a network of different institutions, academic or scientific research or technology development organizations. So we would definitely encourage, where such consortia exist, to apply and be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. There are some questions regarding the form itself, and several people have indicated they would like to see it in Word. What we could do, the form can easily, you go in and you just can copy all the questions and put them into Word. If you think that it's easier, we do it for you. We can do that and post it in the on our webpage, where we have all the information regarding the expressions of interest. And I have another question here regarding, must the membership of the consortium be restricted to environment-related NGOs? No. There is no minimum number of NGOs. And you'll see in the form that there's a question regarding the entity or organization's partners and networks and collaborators. So anyone that's interested in providing more information on, for example, other universities or consortia, that's where they can add it in the form. There's a question from Trevor asking, will the SCBD put qualifying entities in touch with one another, perhaps in the second round?
Can you repeat the question?
There is a question on whether the Secretariat will put qualifying entities in touch with one another in perhaps the second round.
Yeah, thanks, Christine and Harry. For that one, I think it would be dependent on what we see in the responses, and clearly if the some entities that perhaps have not perhaps expressed interest independently, but might have an interesting relationship, we could consider doing that. I think that also kind of relates to Trevor's earlier observation that the regional officers of one intergovernmental organization are interested in this, and putting out feelers to other institutions in the regions, and I think that obviously would be encouraged. And I saw that there was another related question related to consortia or groups. Does the same consideration apply for an intergovernmental organization? And I think clearly international organizations or intergovernmental organizations that have regional presence. A similar question was applied, concerning international organizations. So, I think that, clearly these entities would be in a position to put forward strong expressions of interest, and would be encouraged to proceed in that manner in terms of identifying other institutions regionally or sub-regionally with whom they could work. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. We're getting so many questions. It's hard to keep up. There is a question. Asking how can we assess the volume of work it will imply to be a center, and how can we assess the amount of resources the centers will need to mobilize? I'm wondering if you can speak to this.
Thank you. This is something that will go as we go along. Determining the amount of work will depend on the demand coming from the parties, or the requests coming in from the parties for support. Initially, I think what we look at the terms of reference of these centers and what they've been asked to do. That's the scope of the work that the centers will be expected to deliver. However, the actual amount of work and the resources they required will depend on the demand and coming in from the country. So it's kind of difficult to estimate ahead of time. Although depending on how many countries each region, regional center or sub-regional centers is supporting or operating in, you can estimate. For example, if you in the ASEAN region, which is 10 countries, you can already estimate the kind of support that those 10 countries might require, and the type of work, the type of support they will be requesting in anticipation, and then make a determination. So I guess this will come along as we go along, and being able to accurately determine the level of demand and the amount of resources that need to be mobilized. By resources, and again, by resources, I don't mean money only funds. I mean technical resources, types of expertise, and that will be required by countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. There's a question regarding what would be, if there's any different expectations regarding the scope of work between a regional and a sub-regional center.
Well, the terms of reference for these entities are the same. as I presented earlier. But the scope, as I just said, is really depends on first of all, the number of countries and the type of issues or the type of demands and needs that they have. So definitely an entity working at a sub-region that has 10 countries will be different from the kind of level of support that for an entity that is servicing 20 countries plus. So, but the level of quality of delivery the expectation is the same. We really expect that these entities should be able to provide quality support to the countries that submit requests.
Thank you, Eddie. There's another question. What is the plan for situations where you do not have applications from a region, probably because institutions do not feel powerful enough to do this challenging task?
Yes, thank you. And yeah, this was already envisaged during the negotiations at COP, that there are situations where some regions might not have entities that resident in the sub-region to support them. That's why there was a strong call to have at least a global entity in case of such situations where it can help to fill in the gaps, and also being able to mobilize support from other regions to support a particular region. So in that case, the Secretariat, together with other partners, can try to find ways of supporting countries in those regions. Currently, we have the BioBridge initiative, which is filling in the gap, and for regions that might end up having no clear entity, regional, sub-regional entity to help them, then the Secretariat through the BioBridge initiative will step in on an interim basis.
Thank you, Ari. Trevor was suggesting that we should compile a set of Q&A to address the many questions. It's not possible to answer, and I think we'll try and do that. So we will be posting these on our webpage. We are nearing 10 o'clock, and I think that our time is almost up. I am wondering if you just want to say some final closing remarks before we go, and we will be making this recording available to everyone, and we will be trying to create this Q&A as was suggested, and we'll also include the questions of the form in a Word document on our webpage. If you see at the end of the presentation, we also have links to our Technical Scientific Cooperation Mechanism web page. So all of those are there, and we will be also sharing the presentation with you. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you very much, and we thank you for joining and staying on this webinar. It's quite encouraging, and the type of questions we received and the number and the type of questions also shows the level of interest that you have in this, and we all hope that this will work, and that by COP16 at least we have something going. And by the year 2030, we have a strong network of support centers around the world that countries and parties can go to seek support. So we are very enthusiastic. Of course, and the beginning is going to be very challenging with the uncertainties. It's the first time, I think, under the CBD that this is attempted. But we are learning from other processes, for example, under the chemicals and under the climate change with the CTCN and others. So we'll be drawing from those experiences and bring them in here. But I think we should all be optimistic and looking forward to a positive result and the impact. So we encourage you to those that are willing to support the process, to offer yourselves to support to host these centers. Thank you very much, and keep sending the questions to the email at technicalcooperation@cbd.int. If you have any other questions that we've not been able to answer, and we'll gladly send this to you. And we'll compile the Q&A. We'll respond to all the questions that have been posted in the Q&A and make them available on our website. Thank you once again. I think this is we are off on a good start. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.